All right, so today we're diving into performance management.
Oh, yeah.
And, we've all been there sitting on both sides of those performance reviews.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes they go, well, sometimes they don't.
Mm-hmm.
But, it really has me thinking, what happens when, everything gets disrupted?
Yeah.
Like we saw during the pandemic.
Right.
Do companies just say, hey, let's just press pause on performance reviews this year?
Right. Yeah.
It's too crazy. Or is there a better way?
Well, and that's exactly the question a lot of companies were grappling with.
Yeah.
And what I find so interesting is that the research we're looking at today really pushes back against that idea of just hitting the pause button.
Okay.
Like completely ditching performance management, even during times of crisis.
Yeah.
It can actually do more harm than good.
So it's not as simple as just, salary talks and promotions.
Right. Yeah.
There's more to performance management than just that.
Absolutely. There's a much bigger picture to consider. I mean, think about it. Performance management, it's all about keeping everyone on the same page, aligned with the company's goals.
Yeah.
It's about helping employees develop their skills. And honestly, it's super important for just documenting performance.
Yeah.
Which is essential for all sorts of reasons, legal reasons.
Right.
And making sure we're making informed decisions about talent.
Okay, so we can't just ditch performance reviews altogether.
Nope.
But this research paper that we're looking at makes it pretty clear
Yeah.
that those old school traditional performance reviews, they just weren't really cutting it during crises like we saw with the pandemic.
Yeah, they definitely weren't.
And it makes sense. Priorities were shifting constantly. People were completely overwhelmed.
Right.
And, how do you even measure results or even behaviors when the definition of work is changing almost every day?
Exactly. You're hitting the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
And that's where this research gets really fascinating.
Okay.
It introduces this surprisingly simple solution. It's called the Performance Promoter Score, or PPS for short.
PPS.
Yeah, it's kind of like this hidden gem for performance management. And the best part, it's super adaptable.
That's good.
You can use it in so many different ways.
I like it. So PPS, okay, so what's the big idea behind it?
Well, it's actually based on something you're probably already familiar with from the marketing world.
Oh.
You know those surveys that pop up online asking you how likely you are to recommend a product or service to a friend?
Oh, yeah, the Net Promoter Score.
Exactly, the Net Promoter Score.
Yep, I've seen those.
Well, PPS takes that same idea and applies it to individual and team performance.
So instead of getting bogged down with all these complicated metrics and forms, you just ask one simple question.
You got it, one powerful question.
Okay.
And that question is, how likely are you to recommend working with this person or this team to a friend or colleague?
I see.
It cuts right to the chase.
Yeah.
It's all about whether people genuinely enjoy working with this person.
Right. Or if they're dreading every interaction.
Yeah.
It's basically a measure of their perceived value and how effective they are within the team.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could be really useful.
Yeah.
But it can't be just one question.
You're right. It's not JST one question.
Okay.
Just like with that Net Promoter Score, you follow up that initial rating with some open-ended questions.
Oh, okay.
And that's where you get the really juicy insights.
Okay.
You ask things like, what specifically makes you give that score? Or what could this person or this team do to improve?
I see. So it's not just about the number itself.
Right.
It's about understanding the why behind the rating.
Exactly. And that's what makes PPS so adaptable and so valuable for both the individuals and the organization as a whole.
That makes sense.
We're going to dive deeper into those benefits in just a bit.
Okay.
But first, I want to explain how you actually measure this performance promoter score
All right.
and what it really means in a practical sense.
Okay, let's do it.
So let's get into that.
All right.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
So I've got this really simple question at the heart of PPS.
Yeah.
But how do you actually go about measuring it?
Well,
Do you end up with some sort of score?
you do.
Like we see with those traditional performance reviews?
Yeah, you actually do. It's called the Net Performance Promoter Score.
Okay.
Or NPPS for short.
On PPS.
And the way you calculate it is you take the percentage of what we call promoters.
Okay.
Those are the people who gave a 9 or a 10 rating.
Okay.
And then you subtract the percentage of detractors. Those are the folks who gave a 6 or below.
Okay, so essentially a high NPPS means you've got a lot of people who are really gung-ho about working with that person or team.
Exactly.
So I guess you could say that's a pretty good sign that they're, doing something right.
Exactly. It's kind of like a customer satisfaction rating.
Yeah,
But for your colleagues,
that's a good way to put it.
so a high NPPS means people are generally excited to work with this person.
Right.
Which, probably suggests that they've got strong leadership skills.
Yeah.
Good collaboration.
Makes sense.
On the flip side, if someone's got a low NPPS,
Oh.
that might be a signal that something needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some communication issues going on,
Right.
lack of clarity around roles,
Yeah.
or maybe even some underlying cultural challenges,
Interesting.
things like that.
Okay, I like how this focuses on individual performance.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking PPS could be even more powerful
Right.
when we look at teams.
Absolutely.
So how do you apply this concept to a whole department?
Well, you can absolutely use PPS to measure team performance.
Okay.
The process is pretty much the same.
Right.
You ask team members how likely they are to recommend working with that team to a friend or a colleague.
Mm.
And what's really cool is you can even branch out and get feedback from people outside of the team as well.
Oh, okay.
Like folks from other departments that collaborate with them frequently,
Mm.
or even clients who interact with the team on a regular basis.
I see.
So you're getting a really well-rounded perspective.
That's a really smart way to get a more holistic view
Exactly.
of how the team's actually performing.
Uh-huh.
And it helps prevent teams from becoming too siloed, too.
Right.
Like they're getting feedback that aligns with the broader organizational goals and expectations.
You got it. It keeps everyone connected to the big picture.
I like that a lot.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The research actually highlights how PPS can be used as part of a 360-degree feedback system.
Oh, wow.
So this means you're gathering input from multiple sources.
Gotcha.
Peers, direct reports, even managers.
So it's not just a top-down evaluation anymore.
Nope. You're getting feedback from all angles.
And that's got to lead to some pretty rich insights.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And while you can definitely use PPS for those administrative decisions,
Like what?
like promotions, salary increases,
Yeah.
it's actually particularly valuable for development.
Yeah.
Those open-ended questions we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Those are like gold mines for figuring out where people can grow,
I see.
both as individuals and as a team.
Can you give me like a real-world example
Right.
of what kind of feedback someone might get
Okay.
that would help them grow?
Let's say you're a manager.
Oh,
And someone gives you a high PPS rating,
you're right.
but they mention in the feedback that you sometimes micromanage their projects,
Uh-oh.
right? That's valuable information.
Yeah.
It might be something you're not even consciously aware of,
Yeah, I can see that.
but it's actually impacting how your team members see you.
Right.
So now you've got this really concrete area
Yeah.
to work on to improve your leadership style.
Wow. I can see how that kind of specific feedback
Yeah.
would be way more helpful
Right?
than just getting like a generic, needs improvement on a traditional performance review.
Exactly. It's so much more targeted and actionable.
Right.
And it's not just about individual growth either. That open-ended feedback can also reveal broader cultural issues or leadership issues
No.
within a team or even across the entire organization.
That's huge.
Right. So maybe you're seeing a pattern
Yeah.
of people feeling like their contributions aren't being recognized.
Right.
Or maybe there's a lack of clarity around how decisions are made.
Interesting.
These are all things that PPS can bring to the surface
Yeah.
so you can actually address them proactively.
It's like PPS is turning performance management into a conversation
Yeah,
instead of just this like once a year thing.
absolutely. And that's one of the things that makes it so powerful,
Yeah.
especially now, things are changing so fast.
Uh-huh.
Remote work is becoming more and more common.
Yeah.
PPS lets you have these regular check-ins
Yeah.
about performance, which I think is really crucial for keeping people connected
Totally.
and, fostering that sense of belonging,
Right.
even when people aren't physically together in the office.
It's like with PPS, we're finally admitting that performance management isn't just about numbers.
Right.
It's about people.
Exactly. It's about creating a whole culture of feedback where people actually feel comfortable, sharing their perspectives and ideas,
Right.
and where they know they're actually being heard.
That's so important.
And that actually leads me to a question for our listeners.
Ooh, I love a good question.
How do you think implementing PPS could change how you talk about performance at your own workplace?
Interesting.
Could it help you move beyond just those traditional metrics?
Right.
And really foster a more holistic view
Yeah.
of individual and team contributions?
That's a really great question. It really challenges us to think about how we actually define and measure success.
Yeah.
Is it just about hitting certain targets, or is it more about how we work together, how we support each other,
Right.
and ultimately how we contribute to the overall mission of the organization.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, PPS could be that catalyst for a more engaged, more productive, and ultimately more fulfilling work experience.
For everyone.
For everyone involved.
Well said. I think PPS definitely offers this really fresh and adaptable approach to performance management.
Yeah, I think so too.
One that can help organizations navigate these like crazy times.
Yeah, for sure.
But also just create a more, positive and growth-oriented culture.
Absolutely. Sometimes the simplest solutions really are the most profound.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of PPS. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.